something as well. All right, go for it.
Hello, everyone. In our WTF special edition today, we have Jeremy Rubin dialing in from San Francisco and Bang Chen dialing in from Beijing. I'm Tina of the WTF Collective, creator of Honey Lemon Market, calling in from a barn outside of San Francisco. Jeremy has been a prolific Bitcoin core contributor, and he co-founded Scaling Bitcoin Conferences and is now working on Bitcoin Improvement Proposal BIP 119, Check Template Verify, and a new Bitcoin transaction programming language based on it. Chen is a true keeper of the networks. He started to mine Bitcoin in 2011 and co-founded F2 Pool in 2013 and is the CEO of Stake.fish. Many of you may know F2 Pool is one of the world's largest mining pool, currently ranked #1, accounting for over 17% of Bitcoin network hash rate. Stake.fish is also one of the largest validators, aka also known as staking pools in the world. F2 Pool and Stake.fish support a total of 60 blockchains combined. Ever since the drop of SegWit and the great scaling debate, there has not been many public dialogues between the mining community and the core developers. And so I would love to hear from Chun. From your perspective, what happened back then and what has taken place since then in the Bitcoin mining community?
So I first read about Bitcoin at Slashdot, and I was contributing a social alien project called SETI at Home. They recently shut down, I think, last month. So this project has a similar distributed computing concept as Bitcoin mining. So the only difference, SETI at Home is non-profit, and Bitcoin, once you mine some, you can actually be sold for some money. So that's why I almost immediately started to mine Bitcoin. And at its peak, I had about 0.4% of the network hash rate myself, and generate more than 20 BTC per day. So I mined about 7,700 BTC in the first 2 years operation, and among some other altcoins like NMC, IXC, I0C, and LTC, and some others. So 2 years later, due to the introduction of ASICs, I had to shut down the mining farm because most of the mining rigs, they have quite limited RAM, so I could not switch most of them to LTC mining. And also because I actually pre-ordered one, the very first generation of 300, the NG John's original miner, which only one unit itself it's more powerful than my entire operation. So it was like a real money printer back then. So and after a couple of months, after I received, if you operate the pretty big mining farm of mining GPUs, those GPUs constantly get a lot of issues. You need to go there personally. Sometimes the system just keeps unresponsive, so you have to go there personally, restart, reboot, and do a lot. It's quite a difficult task. But once you switch to ASIC mining, just one unit, basically you retired and you can sleep. So only like a couple of months later, I started to do something else. That's launch mining pool. And so F2 Pool opened 7 years ago tomorrow, May 5th. So only 1 year into our operation, we overtake the ghash.io and became the largest Bitcoin mining pool and also the largest Litecoin mining pool. I don't feel myself a miner of the current generation because I still had a fresh memory of mining pools like Deepbeat, things like that. And for myself, I haven't touched a real mining hardware of my own for more than 7 years.
Wow. First of all, congratulations. Almost anniversary, many years anniversary since the beginning of Aptable. And it's amazing to hear from your perspective. You actually don't feel like you're a miner anymore, which I think resonates with a lot of the current miners who are often viewed in a stereotype as a miner. Can you share just a little bit about what has happened in the past couple of years? There hasn't been much communication between the Bitcoin mining community, especially from Asia, with the developer community because of the scaling debate, and why we're essentially having this dialogue today.
Yes, since 2015, there have some quite active debate, around how Bitcoin should scale, and should we go to have a hard fork, or should we keep this block size limit to only 1 megabyte for some time or forever? So the community got split, and some of the people left, like earlier ones, like Macron, and we also see some people left, like this guy, and he founded Bitcoin Cash, and together with pretty high-profile people like Roger Ver, like among others. So, do miners care about Bitcoin development? I must say, no. Not current generation of miners. Of my generation of miners, probably they do, but I mean they did. Because if you get to know Bitcoin in 2011, that's you must be quite active in some. I got to know Bitcoin from Slashdot. That's basically Git community. But if you get to know Bitcoin in 2007, 2008, 2009, it's from different, could from any background. So, most of miners today, they might Bitcoin because of, it make money. And I just said I feel myself no longer be a Bitcoin miner. That's probably true, and they're probably not true. Because only a few months ago, I sent like my partner some money, a lot of money, and my partner said to me that let's start my handshake, start my RVN, start my Bitcoin, and let's buy some miners. So I sent him some money, and I know he has a mining farm somewhere in I never been there before, and I don't know what type of miners are they, and I don't know anything. I just give him money, and then I after some while I keep receiving Bitcoins every day, and that's Bitcoin mining. And even worse, some other people they instead of receiving Bitcoin every day, they receive fiat. So that's today's Bitcoin mining, what it is. So you probably never have to touch a real mining hardware, and you virtually become a Bitcoin miner. So how do we define Bitcoin miner today is a question. And so honestly, most miners do not have the technical know-how today to how to to understand how Bitcoin works. And most of miner who based in China do not share the ideology and philosophy behind Bitcoin. Because Bitcoin was born out of the cyberpunk culture. So today's miner, I must say, probably most of them have no clue, no idea what that culture is. And also, most of the people in China, they have just liberated themselves from poverty and hunger, and didn't yet have time to think about like human economic freedom and human liberty yet. So what we can do as a mining pool is nowadays is to ensure that at least we have our team members, our employees to understand what they are doing. And hopefully we can create a product to serve the miners and offer them better fee rate. Meanwhile, they also share like the philosophy behind Bitcoin, and so we can move forward. Like nowadays, when candidates apply to approve a stake fish, one question we ask is why Bitcoin matter, what problem Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies solve, and what is free and open source software, and why there be free and open source software, and kind of like what software license original Bitcoin full nodes released under things like this to ensure that the candidates fit the culture.
Yeah, well, thank you for Jun for being so frank and direct about sharing what miners today's apathy is like. It's sad, but it is inevitable. However, Jeremy, on the other side, I believe you've spent essentially the past years trying to go against this kind of apathy. So, can you give us a quick digest on the latest Bitcoin development activities, what the core contributors have been focusing on and are focusing on in 2020, and why should we care? Why should not just Chun and his employees working at the mining pools care, but also that those people who are mining and has been disintermediated should care?
Okay, please. Sorry.
Yeah, so Bitcoin is kind of in a primordial phase where we are really pulling ourselves out of the mud and trying to become a system for the world. And it's still an early days opportunity. So I think for people who are mining, in order to keep Bitcoin here in the long term, it's important to pay attention to what sort of technical changes are going to make sure that we're building something that's going to last and not just be a short-term opportunity. Personally, I've been working on something called Check Template Verify. There's a handful of core developers and Bitcoin researchers who've been working on a myriad of innovations in the space that are hopefully going to work their way forwards. The three things that I want to sort of share today that are important developments going forward are Taproot, Check Template Verify, and some sort of fundamental re-architecting of the Bitcoin node that's in development. So Taproot, there's been a lot of ink spilled on it so far. I think there's a lot of good resources out there. It's essentially improving the way that you're able to store and hold your Bitcoin with more sophisticated scripting system, as well as a better signature algorithm, which is Schnorr signatures. So Taproot has been worked on for a number of years now, and it's getting to the point of being ready for adoption. But in Bitcoin, there's sort of a global consensus needed to adopt changes. So it's important to start having that dialogue around if it's something that is acceptable for all users, and especially for miners, it's important that they understand what change Taproot is making. Check Template Verify is what I've personally been working on. It is a new opcode for Bitcoin, which enables you to do a type of covenant. A covenant is a restriction on how a coin can be spent. That sounds like a bad thing because in Bitcoin, you want to have your money be able to be spent however you want to spend it. But what these covenants allow you to do is essentially program the flow of your Bitcoin between accounts and ownership. And that gives you the ability to start writing advanced smart contracts in Bitcoin. And some people in the chat on the side have been asking, when are you guys going to talk about DeFi? And this is a part of it, is having the covenants is going to enable you to make things as sort of a decentralized finance layer on top of Bitcoin. That's just one of many use cases. For miners in particular, I think that Check Template Verify is an important change to be looking at because it is fundamentally aimed at solving a congestion control issue. One of the problems we know in Bitcoin is there's limited block space for transactions, and that can have a negative impact for users. So users shy away from the system. Check Template Verify decouples the sending and receiving of coins, which allows more people to send coins in a given block. this allows more people to rely on Bitcoin for their everyday payments. And that's going to increase the usage of Bitcoin, which is going to make mining more profitable in the long term. So I'm really advocating for Check Template Verify as not only something that's going to enable a lot of contractability, people able to write their own smart contracts on Bitcoin, but also in something that fixes a fundamental issue around the backlog of transactions. That backlog of transactions is also one of the changes I think that's coming to Bitcoin Core that's going to be really important to engage with the mining community on. And that is re-architecting the way the memory pool works in Bitcoin. The memory pool is the pending backlog of transactions waiting to be processed. And there are some fundamental changes that have to happen in the architecting of how that transaction selection works during mining that is going to make it significantly more efficient and improve fees. That's really important for Check Template Verify. It's also really important for applications like Lightning as well, that the memory pool is able to support some of these applications with a good user experience.
Well, that's really impressive. I heard also you've been working on a new programming language that enable actually building protocols, not just scripts. What would that mean? Do you see a new generation of DeFi built on Bitcoin's script because of what you have, what CTV can enable?
Absolutely, yeah. So with Check Template Verify, it is a tiny opcode that does a really specific operation. And it's kind of hard to use. It's not a programming language. It's just an instruction. And so what I've been working on is an entirely new programming language that's based on that instruction that allows you to make composable, easy to understand smart contracts. So it's kind of closest thing would be Solidity on Ethereum, but it has a number of safety properties that mean that you're not going to have a lot of the complexity that you end up running into with a fully stateful Turing complete programming language.
Very cool. So I guess moving on to DeFi, when it comes to development activities, one of the theme of this discussion is called DeFi discussion. And one of the most active areas of smart contract development has been decentralized finance or open finance. But DeFi is a loaded umbrella term for services that covers investing, borrowing, lending, trading based on decentralized non-custodial infrastructure, be it on Ethereum or Bitcoin or other blockchain infrastructure. And so essentially, and it has frequently been associated with the characteristic of interoperability, programmability, and composability. So Jeremy, you have in the past on Bitcoin created PaulSwap, a smart contract platform for trading derivatives, and have been exploring the possibility of MakerDAO CDP-like construct on Bitcoin script. Do you see DeFi as relevant or important for Bitcoin? And also, what is your view on the interop attempts such as Keep Networks, TPTC, and the various BTC tokens on Ethereum?
Yeah, decentralized finance is a loaded term because it has all these connotations of the way that Ethereum has thought about it. My metaphor that I like is Ethereum has kind of like spaghetti composability. You take a noodle of spaghetti and you throw it into the bowl of spaghetti, and it's kind of like a knot and bundle of spaghetti, and the noodle gets in all the other noodles. And there's sort of like these non-obvious effects of how these things get tangled up in one another. I think a good example of this is the flash loan sort of crisis last month, where all of a sudden people started doing flash loans and people did not understand how this was going to impact every contract in the network. In Bitcoin, the way that I'm thinking about it, you want to have more top-down composability, where you have a building block that you're able to plug into a contract that you're working on and use that inside of your well-understood context without being impacted by other people. So I think a better term for Bitcoin is maybe like peer-to-peer finance, where you're able to participate in a marketplace. That marketplace, may or may not be decentralized, but really it's about working with a known set of peers to accomplish a financial transaction, rather than sort of a completely open system where a new, contract comes in and interacts with everything else.
Wow, that's very interesting as a viewpoint. I have a question for Chun. Miner extractable value, MEV, as defined in Phil Dian's paper Flash Boys 2.0, that refers to the ability for miners to front run and reorder transactions happening on chain, which poses no longer just existential but real threat to DeFi. That doesn't just apply to Ethereum, but also on essentially transaction activity all over on any given chain. So what's your view on miners, being a miner yourself and mining pool, capturing MBB? Do you think it's right? Do you think it's inevitable?
Yeah, definitely. Because in the cyberspace, code is law, and if code permits front run, permit reorder transactions, it must not be a crime. So similar to 51% attack, 51% attack is a feature of Bitcoin. It's not a bug. So one of the most famous attacks in the early days was probably when Luke Jr., one of the respected Bitcoin core developer from Florida, in late 2011, he just before the deployment of mining, Namecoin network get stuck due to the difficulty adjustment design, and it was a double spend attack. And later in January 2012, he also launched another attack against the Coin, CLC, and killed that coin. So I personally also launched a few other quite successful attacks against a few altcoins in 2012, 2013. So some of them are already well into history book, but it's probably not great to disclose the details, I must say. But one of the most famous one being in March 2013, when Bitcoin network accidentally got forked. I managed to double spend 10,000 US dollar worth of Bitcoin during this crisis, and that's probably one of the only known successful double spend attempts in Bitcoin's history. And in 2017, during the Status SNT ICO, we launched the experimental test to front-run the ICO. And only a couple of days later, everything got detailed analysis on the Reddit post. So, if you are no one back in 2012, 2013, and you can do anything. And but if you become someone, then everything become under a spotlight. And since we are already started build up our branding, I think it's probably not good idea to do anything like this. But in 2016, when Ethereum the DAO attacks happened, there are a lot of argue and disagreement. So should we fork the Ethereum or should we not? And we were probably one of the only major mining pools stand against any human factor hard fork, because we believe code is law. So, and I must say it's not just a POW, so miner shouldn't be the excuse. On POS network, the same could happen too. So you can front run transaction on POS network too. Let's take EOS as example. If you try to front end your transaction on EOS network, probably the next day you kick out of the top 21. So, what we can do is that we'll try not to restrict the capability of front running or reorder only by ourselves. I think what we can help is maybe one day when front run become an issue or become a threat of the network, we probably consider create an API and make a front running and reorder accessible to everyone. So it's similar to today's push TX or transaction acceleration services. This is already happening, and also recently some other parties also approach us, ask us to develop such API to front run transactions on the Ethereum network. So we'll see if any impact to this kind of service, and
Wow. I think what you just said just accelerated the future to come. Well, I'm curious to hear what Jeremy, what do you think about all activities that in the future that goes on essentially on top of which on Bitcoin, essentially miners have such power over. It's almost the power the power of the tyranny of the structurelessness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I see that in the longer term. The framework that I have is that I want to increase the utility of Bitcoin transactions dramatically. So I want a Bitcoin transaction to be really, really, really valuable. Right now, they're not. The only thing that a Bitcoin transaction can really resolve is like a single payment or a Lightning channel. Lightning channels elevate the value of a Bitcoin transaction because now you can cover more and more. And I think as you go into more peer-to-peer finance applications, the value of a transaction can increase more. And I think that also points to a solution for some of the minor front-running issues, which is that you're going to be having a peer-to-peer finance relationship with a number of counterparties. And in terms of like running the OTC desk, you're going to be dealing with these counterparties directly. It's not necessarily going to be front-runnable as a like Ethereum style, I open up an offer, anybody can slide in and take it. The issue with that, even though it sort of like seems like this minor extractable value is a good thing, it actually is a really bad thing for the ecosystem because it drives away participation in these protocols, which makes those markets less liquid. So I think ultimately in the long run, peer-to-peer finance with explicit kind of consent on both sides is going to be able to form a more liquid market, even though in traditional markets we don't see that. We see more liquidity on central clearing exchanges. Here, I think we're going to see more liquidity because people will think that they can get fairer execution.
That's fascinating. Well, we'll wrap the session with one last question. So how do you envision miners and developers collaborating or in the future? Or is it going to be kind of this semi-adversarial kind of position between the developers and the miners? And you can touch on like development, open source development funding, and in terms of how you think and what may hinder the collaboration between the miners and developers.
I would certainly really like to engage with miners on Bitcoin core innovations that I think are going to be uniquely high impact for miners and build out a bigger bridge that we can, work together and collaborate and sort of build out a track record. Having that pathway, which doesn't really exist right now, is going to be really good, I think, long term for Bitcoin. So my DMs are open, and I know John, and we can talk as well. I think it's going to be really important, and I think ultimately it's going to elevate what Bitcoin's able to do and what community we're going to be able to build. So hopefully that will improve over time. Maybe I'll also try and do like a monthly live stream if people want to, for miners in particular, if people want to join. But I don't know, John, do you have any other closing thoughts on that?
Yeah. So for me, definitely we want to keep it work together with Bitcoin miners. In 2006, 2015, 2016, we actually had pretty a lot of dialogue between a lot of Bitcoin core developers and miners, and so what I think what can help is Bitcoin need in the long term is probably need a well-written governance system because Bitcoin is first a blockchain, and the governance is not yet there. It's unlike many later blockchains where the governance comes before the blockchain itself. So once you already have a lot of money here and a lot of effort, it's not that easy to rewrite the constitution. So, but I think the committee should work together towards the direction who will have a vote, who will have a say, and we all agree with that. Some people believe that hash rate is low, and some people think, let's UASF. So I think we must find a way to gap these two group of ideas.
Well, very cool. Well, thank you. I think we're about time, and I guess I would open up on online discussions. And if you guys follow our tweets on WTF DAO, we'll continue this discussion between the mining community and the core dev community, and about DeFi. Yeah. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks. We're going to go to the next session now.